that I would like contractors to know is, I think, which a lot of them do, keeping the neighbors happy and the noise, and that is super helpful. And we get cards all the time, like from a contractor saying, we're doing a house in your neighborhood, just so you know this is happening, or there's signs up saying don't park here on other neighbors' properties, and I think that's super helpful. People are more willing to, or just nicer about it. The neighbors are. They're not like, another project at the Raffadals.
When he first came out, he was a likable guy, and then he's working on the toilet. But there was a couple things he said that I thought he could use better bedside manners. So then I sort of questioned, like, what are we dealing with here? But then when the job was finished, I felt real positive about him and would hire him again. But there was sort of a shift.
Can you give an example of one of those things he said that you're kind of put off by a little?
Well, I was questioning when they were taking down the garage, when he said he had to cut into the garage, and he had made this hole in the garage thinking where the pipe would have been, but then it wasn't there. And so then he moved over, and then when I said, whoa, how much of the ceiling are we going to be taking down here? He sort of snapped at me like, well, do you want this fixed or not? I was sort of like, well, yeah, but like I would like to know what's happening.
Right, along the way when parts of my ceiling are.
But in hindsight, I think he was in his mind trying to figure it out, and then he felt maybe that I was questioning his intelligence on how he handles the project. Okay. So he probably is the type of man that just doesn't like to be, he marches to his own music.
First of all, I was very impressed with his knowledge and the fact that I led him to say that we wanted all of the ducts cleaned, and I wanted both of the fireplaces, all the chimneys cleaned. And not only did he do all of that, but when he got to the downstairs, he looked at it and he said, this doesn't need to be cleaned. So I was really impressed in that, because we had recently had work done and we had a gas insert put in, so they must have cleaned it when the gas insert was put in. And so rather than charging us and cleaning it and overdoing what we didn't need to have done, he was very honest and said it doesn't need to be done. So I was very happy about that. I was happy that he could come out as fast as he could and that he was as knowledgeable as he was. And quite frankly, it cost less than I thought it was going to cost.
What I would tell them to keep doing is, like I had mentioned before, after he did that initial assessment, I felt as though he really took the time to explain to me, in my terms, what was going on with it and what they could do to repair it. And so that at that point, that put me at ease, knowing, that they felt as though they knew exactly what it was, and not only did they know what it was, but that they came prepared to do something about it. And so that, I didn't have to drag out the process and worry about it any longer, that they were able to just kind of get everything wrapped up quickly.
He's probably an exception for my experience with most contractors, because he has a personality. Him and I have some interest together, so we talk about different things outside of whatever the work project is. So it makes it easier to have a relationship with somebody like that versus somebody that just comes and does their job and leaves. I've had tons of experience with other vendors that don't treat you the same, starting on the phone.
When he was done with the actual process of repair, he went over and explained what he had done. He had a checklist. It was written down. It was printed, and on that list, he had different things in their process they must have. So he had checked it off, and then he would say, okay, so I inspected it, and then I cleaned it, and I used your hose, and he reviewed it with me, and I found that helpful, because then I completely understood what had been done.
What, if you had the opportunity to give this contractor feedback, what would you tell him to keep doing? Like, what were the benefits of working with him that you would say that, keep doing this?
Keep calling back Friday afternoon, even when you probably are done with your day and want a break. Keep that response time from the initial contact short, and keep your schedule available so that the time between your setting up the appointment and the actual appointment is a decent amount of time. Like, I would say preferably less than a week.
You know, I think when contractors, I think the most important thing that contractors need to know, and I haven't had one that hasn't done this, so it's just that you are entering someone's home. It's a very personal space. And so it's really nice if feels like a more personal relationship, that they're not just coming in here to make some money, that they're really care that your home is working well or whatever it needs. Both people were so nice to deal with that even the young kid, when I ended up paying him and I knew Paul had made him not charge so much, I ended up giving him a tip because he was such a nice kid working.
One thing that he could do that I would recommend him do is be more of a closer to a certain extent, ask for the sale, get something on the books, and, you know, continue to follow up. I think he could bring, you know, revenue or money in earlier to the situation if he either had a salesperson or if he himself probably were more of a salesperson. So he had all the honesty there, but, you know, he didn't necessarily ask for the business, and he certainly could have. And I think in some situations people would walk away just because he didn't ask for the business.
Paul had told me how much he thought it would cost, but the subcontractor was out here even longer, and so I was a little nervous how much this was all going to be costing. And then I heard Paul, okay, so then he had to come back out, but then I heard Paul, when Paul came out, because I had not paid the subcontractor because Paul wanted to make sure it was done right, but I heard Paul call him and say, you know, this should have been a 1 hour job, it took you 4 hours, I think you have to eat the loss of the time. And the guy did. So Paul sort of protected us, even though he really didn't know us.
And how did you feel about that?
So I really felt like Paul, I really thought he handled it well.
If I were to give a piece of advice to contractors that are looking to get people's business, there always seems to be this air of, I'm so busy, you'd be so lucky if I were to do your job. And I think that, you know, I feel sometimes that the service level, or that whole kind of like, this is a partnership and I'm gonna be involved and engaged in the outcome of this project. I feel like that's something that's different than what might have done before. I feel like all the contractors have so much business that they can hardly fit another job in. So I feel like they're doing me a favor, and I wish it didn't feel that way. And maybe it's just I found the wrong people.
Well, the technician was real good. You know, he was real caring about having me call if something went wrong over the weekend. And it was real nice that the house heated up Friday night. But Saturday morning when it made the horrible noise, and then I called in, then I was feeling bad that I didn't hear back from anybody, you know, because it was horrible, so I turned it off. I didn't want to let it run like that. And when I left the voicemail, I told them I turned the furnace off. And then the man that called back Monday morning was actually kind of rude about it, telling me, well, we'll get there when we get there. So, you know, I wasn't real pleased with that, with the Saturday to Monday.
I wish they were more specific, because still they're just giving you a small window of opportunity. Even though you get to pick the date and the time that you want, I don't like that you can't say, okay, you're gonna be here at 11. Because time is money and money is time, and I really don't, I might wanna go do something, but I don't think I can because it's between 11 and 2, do you know what I mean? And it's just, you can't leave. You feel like you're kind of trapped in your house, even though it's only for 3 hours.
So you're always at their mercy of waiting for them. So that's always frustrating. And then frankly, once they're here on the job, they're not really open about communication. I'm one of those types of people that I try to be here when the vendor's here to do the work, so I can understand what the problem is. And a lot of people don't like you hovering over their shoulders, so I think it makes some of them uncomfortable because I'm always asking them questions. I want to understand what the problem is and what they have to do to solve the problem. So I can understand if it's something I can do in the future to, minimize or eliminate the problem to start with. So
I think I was also impressed with the fact that as he was doing the work, he showed me what he was doing. He opened up the vents and he showed me how thick the dust and the buildup was and why it was really important. Because part of the discussion when we first hired this contractor was I felt strongly that it needed to be done, and my husband said, oh, that doesn't need to be done. And by him showing it to us, it really proved to both of us that yes, it was important. Yes, it did need to be done. And we also know that now we need to do it on a regular basis because we're breathing all of that air in that's being filtered by this thick layer of dust that's in your vents that you don't ever see because they're covered and hidden.
So that show me factor was
Yes.
helped to build
It was
credibility.
Yeah, it was very nice that he was explaining things as he was going along, so that at the end of the appointment, I knew what had been done, and I knew that I wasn't wasting my money on a service that didn't really need to be done.
If there are things that you don't have to replace, even on this one, we had valves that were new that we had bought from a hardware store, knowing that the valves were bad on the boiler. And so I had those valves, and I asked him, should I use this? Should I replace this? And he's like, no, you don't need to put new valves into it. This was the problem or the issue. And so I felt like he was really creative in problem solving and finding ways to not charge me extra money for things. And for me, that made me want to spend the money elsewhere with him. So if he wanted to say, in this particular situation, I recommend this model because I think this is going to be, more robust for this situation, I would have probably gone up on the furnace because he wasn't trying to charge me a lot of value add-ons or other, other things.
It didn't take them long to kind of figure out what was wrong with it. It wasn't anything hugely major. It was just, one of those things where things froze, and they had to kind of, and plus they didn't chastise me, but they were like, you really need somebody to come out here and clean your air conditioner and do certain things to keep the upkeep so then I wouldn't have any problems.
Okay. How did you feel about that when they were mentioning the...
That I wasn't being a good homeowner? A part of me was a little defensive. I'd be like, okay, I'm sorry, but it's not the first thing that I want to spend my money on. But at the same time, I think that somebody telling me that is really, they're trying to prevent me from having to spend more money at the end. So better spend $50 to $100 to have them professionally clean it and take care of it for me rather than a $1,500 or having to have it replaced.
We did narrow it down based, I think, on personality of the contractors. We really liked them, and that's how I know oftentimes that's how I picked some of our major remodels as well, when I was based on how I thought I would work with them, because I'm kind of the go-to one on the projects, and I liked their personalities and how they interacted with me.
Well, I was, glad that it wasn't costing me major amounts of money. It was something that could be easily fixed. And he did some adjustments and then telling me that I need to have it cleaned annually and how to protect it before, like winterize it. So I appreciated those comments from him.
So he shared some things that were personal that, again, made me feel very comfortable with him. In the process of him showing me my options for furnaces or boilers, he gave me good reasons why you wouldn't want to take the least expensive one, but he also wasn't recommending the highest end model, recognizing that for this particular property, and it's only about 1,200 square feet, so it's not a whole lot of area to have to warm. I just felt that he was giving me a very practical solution for what we had. So I absolutely not only wanted to replace that with him, but we have a new build that we're doing that will also use him for not only the furnace, but the air conditioning and the ductwork and whatever else he would want to do in the new build.
Well, I just appreciate, he seems to have integrity, where you don't necessarily sense that with everybody else. He's willing to communicate, whether it's about hands-on while he's doing the work, talking to you, informing you of the processes he's doing it. And, I say I've developed somewhat of a personal relationship. I can talk to him about, his family and what's going on with his business while he's doing the work on the projects at my house at that point. So, and again, you just feel like it's not just a guy off the street. Although I don't do anything outside of that experience with the guy, but it's very professional, and you feel comfortable and trusting that he's not going to take advantage of you.